The topic tonight is a very essential topic. Just before I begin, let me just say this, that this year should be a blessing and a merit for the health and success of the families of Regina Bas Yosef Reuven and Yeshaya ben Yisrael ben Yamin Wolf ben Tzvi Hersh Baruch ben Binyamin Wolf. And the Neshamas should have schus from all this. And also Baruch Shmuel ben Basya, I think should have refuah shlema. Yes. The topic is all about something that we encounter every week, Shabbos, right? It's obviously one of the most frequently encountered Yom Tovim, if you want to call it a Yom Tov. It's really a moed, of Shabbos. But it's amazing when you think about it. If you ask anybody, what is Shabbos? And why is it so great? And so on. And why there's so many halachas about it, They won't know, really. I mean, I can tell you some of the halachas and so on, obviously. But what the real meaning of Shabbos is, why it is so great, most people have no clue. I mean, I'll tell you, it's a day of rest. Somebody just mentioned that it's a day you can create yourself, whatever. But that's not really what Shabbos is about, although it certainly can incorporate those ideas. There's no question about that. So I want to give a shir about what really is the pnimis of Shabbos. And as such, to try to answer all the halachas or all the phenomena that is relevant to Shabbos. And the truth is, which is interesting, you can go through your whole life and never really know what Shabbos is, other than the surface. When it is, how is it, and so on, right? Which I find to be remarkable because it's so frequent, and so on, But when you hear what it really is all about, you will understand why Shabbos is so important and what the significance of it really is. But before I begin, there's something that you have to be acquainted with. We know that there are two Beis HaMikdash, the Bais Rishon, right? First you had the Mishkan, then you had the Beis HaMikdash. First, that was destroyed. Then you had the Beis HaMikdash Sheni, the second one, that was also destroyed. We know that there will be a third Beis HaMikdash. I mean, that the classic place where that is described is in Yecheskel. In fact, what is amazing is that he actually gives all the dimensions of the third Beis HaMikdash. It's incredible. In fact, Yecheskel said to the Rebbeinu Shalom in the Nevuah, where the Rebbeinu Shalom commanded him to bring down all the measurements of the third Beis HaMikdash. So Yecheskel said, what do you mean, the Beis HaMikdash Sheni just destroyed. Now who's interested in the third Beis HaMikdash, which obviously will not come around for a long time? So Rebbeinu Shalom said, no, I want you to disclose that. And there are very important ideas about that third Beis HaMikdash. And then you will understand what is its relevance to Shabbos. What is the Beis HaMikdash really? The truth is that what the Rebbeinu Shalom did is that there are two models of the Bria. That means, if you ever look at a model, right? It's a model of something that it represents. And the question is, how accurate is it? How comprehensive is it, right? But there are two models that are very accurate and very comprehensive, you see? And most people are not aware of what they are. But the first model, right, is a human being. We look the way we do because we are a model of creation. That's really what we are. Why we stand, why we can walk on twos, why we look the way we do with a head and a torso, you have arms and legs and so on. Why is that? Certainly nothing really resembles us, and even the apes or gorillas, whatever, they don't walk on twos really. They're built with their spines are curved, where they really walk on fours. It's unnatural for them to stand, although they could, theoretically. But the human being is really a model of the Bria, the entire creation. It's amazing. And the pasuk that alludes to that, where it says, Umi besorai, egze Elokim, and from my flesh I can see God. You see? Now that can mean several ideas, but what it really means is that if you know the anatomy and the physiology of a human being, right, you can actually figure out the creation itself. It's very interesting, because the human being represents the 10 spheres and so on. You have the head, and then you have the torso and the arms, the legs, and the genital regions and so on. They actually represent a model of creation. So the human being is the first one. The second model is the Beis HaMikdash, or the first one was the Mishkan, right? That represents creation, and it's exact. In fact, if you want to look at what is the Mishkan, which was really the first Beis HaMikdash, how does it represent? So there's the Malbim, famous commentator, in beginning of Vayikra, that actually describes the Kabbalistic understanding of the Mishkan and how it represents the whole creation. So you can always look there. You see. Now, why do we have three? Because the world looks different after the involvement or the interaction that the Jews have in terms of bringing God closer, you see. So the Mishkan reflected the universe at that point in time. But hundreds of years later, when Shlomo Melech built the first Beis HaMikdash, then that reflected, right, the creation after a great deal of avodah of the Jews. That's why it would look different. You see? And the second Beis HaMikdash also reflects the creation, but after the Jews sinned and so on. So the Beis HaMikdash changes. That's why its measurement changes. And that's why there's a tremendous difference between the first Beis HaMikdash and the second Beis HaMikdash. Now the third Beis HaMikdash, what's that going to be all about? So that's also a model of creation. And the reason why it looks so different is because that is the Beis HaMikdash after the Tikkun. You see? And the creation itself is different. After the Jews will have done the Tikkun by the mitzvahs, they will have suffered and whatever. So therefore, creation will be different. It will have incorporated the actual rectification of the creation itself. And therefore the Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi, third one, will actually reflect that with a difference in structure, difference in measurements and so on. So that's a short story. Why there are three Beis HaMikdash, you see. So, like I say, the first Beis HaMikdash is the whole time of the Shoftim, Yoshua, Shoftim, and the kings. But after Klal Yisrael sinned, then the Beis HaMikdash was missing a lot of components. So therefore the second Beis HaMikdash had to reflect creation after a lot of the sins. So that's why after all the kings were gone, you had the second Beis HaMikdash. And like I say, and that lasts until now. And the third Beis HaMikdash reflects by its measurements and its structure and its components. It reflects the Tikkun itself. And that remains forever. So that's a very interesting concept. Now, besides that, there's also something else. What is the second Beis HaMikdash? Now, There seems to be, will God build this third Beis HaMikdash by himself, or will he have an assist by mankind, the Jewish people? It seems to be an argument, but there's no question that he will build the third Beis HaMikdash. Question is, will we contribute to that or not? Okay. But the real idea is that he will bring the third Beis HaMikdash. You see? So one day you're going to get up and take a look outside your window, and lo and behold, there's the third Beis HaMikdash. And I guarantee you, every newspaper in the world will carry that event, because it's changing. It's radical shift in the entire structure of the world. Now, but the question is, what is the third Beis HaMikdash that what God will build? And the answer to that, which is really fascinating, most people don't know, there is a Beis HaMikdash here, but there's also a Beis HaMikdash Elyon in heaven, which exactly corresponds to this Beis HaMikdash. You see? So that's the Beis HaMikdash or Elyon that is an exact replica and corresponding to the Beis HaMikdash Tachton, which is here, you see. So what really happens, and it's the real beginning of the process, what God eventually wants us to do is we have to transform the entire physical world into a spiritual one. That's really what happens. That's called zikuch. Zikuch means to purify. What we have to do, which I mentioned even I think last week, or whatever, 2 weeks or whatever, we need to purify Geshem. We need to purify the world, you see. Now what does that mean? Well, there, like I said, in the world above us, we are what's called the Olam Asiyah. We are the world of action. Above us is a spiritual world, not physical, that's called Olam Yetzirah, you see. And the Beis HaMikdash, or Elyon, is in the world of Yetzirah, so it's purely spiritual, you see. So, to begin the process of the purification of the physical world, what the Rebbeinu Shem will do is take the Beis HaMikdash of that world of Olam Yetzirah, which is completely spiritual, and that will descend and merge and become the Beis HaMikdash of this world. That means we will actually have a spiritual Beis HaMikdash that is physicalized and becomes a Beis HaMikdash here. So you will actually be experiencing the Beis HaMikdash Elyon, right, from Olam Yetzirah, which we have never seen before. The only one who is privy to that are Malachim, because that's their realm, Olam Yetzirah. So that Beis HaMikdash, the Maila above, will actually descend and become our Beis HaMikdash. Isn't that interesting? But it will be physicalized or mixed with this, where the Beis HaMikdash used to stand. Now that's an incredible thing, because not only will we experience a Beis HaMikdash, what was the Beis HaMikdash in Olam Yetzirah, which is the world of the angels, right? But there's something even more fascinating, you see. And that is that in our world, when we had the Beis HaMikdash, what is the Beis HaMikdash really? Basically, it's the residence of the Shekhinah. It's really what it is. That's its essence. As it says in the Torah, V'shochanti b'seichom v'yosulu migdash, and they will make me a migdash. V'shochanti, and I will dwell b'seichom, in their midst. Right? God says that. So the Shekhinah, which is the divine presence, resides in the Beis HaMikdash here. When it was destroyed, I mentioned a while back, where did Hashem go? Right? Well, what he went is the Shekhinah goes in Golus, just like we do. So the Golus of the Shekhinah is dislocated from its normal place, which is in the Kodesh Kodashim, and it went to the Kaisel. That's where the Shekhinah is now, but a very small remnant. A great deal of the Shekhinah not evaporated, but I should say, but became concealed. So we will actually experience the Shekhinah. Now you can imagine what the Shekhinah looks like, or what the experience is in Shemayim, in Olam Yetzirah. Must be unbelievable. That's the Shekhinah that the Malachim experience, right? If you went to the Beis HaMikdash, now you would experience the Shekhinah, believe it or not. You would see the miracles and so on. And you would experience a real difference, a presence of some sort was there. Very powerful, you see. And you would experience that in the time that the Beis HaMikdash stood. But now that it's gone, so the Shekhinah has moved. Most of it is concealed. Whatever remains is now by the Kessin. That's why if you go to the Kessin, you actually feel something. You can actually feel a presence if you have the merit to be attuned to that spirituality. So therefore, since the Beis HaMikdash L'mayla, which was mean in Olam Yetzirah, actually comes down and becomes our Beis HaMikdash, right? Becomes physicalized, right? But then the Shekhinah of that Beis HaMikdash also descends. So what does that mean? That means the Shekhinah descends with that upper Beis HaMikdash, comes down, and we actually experience the divine presence, right, of Olam Yetzirah. And now you understand what it means in the pasuk, Kimolo Oretz Deo. The earth will be filled with the knowledge of God as the waters covers the seabed. All right? What kind of a presence is that? Could you imagine that the presence of God will be so conspicuous, so obvious, right? That it fills the entire planet, and anywhere you go, you can actually feel it, the Shekhinah, because it's worldwide. Kimolo Oretz there, the entire world is filled with the presence of God. What kind of a level of Shekhinah is that? And the answer is, that is the level of Shekhinah that was in Olam Yetzirah. That is called the Messianic light. Isn't that interesting? So you now understand this Beis HaMikdash L'mayla, right, already exists, except it's, I shouldn't say the wrong place, it's really the right place, but it's L'mayla. It's in heaven. Or I should say, really, heaven is not a good word for it, but it's in Olam Yetzirah, which is the world of formation, which is the world above us, and it is spiritual. You see? So the only one who gets to experience that are the Malachim. But we will also experience when that becomes our third Beis HaMikdash. So that is the beginning, the initiation of the merging of the spiritual domain and the physical domain. That's how it begins. And as a result of that, the Spirit of God completely pervades the entire world. It's funny. You get a kick out of this, They talk about climate change. Boy, are they right. But the climate change is what they think, right? The climate change is the Shekhinah now envelops the entire planet. That's a climate change, right? So they are right, except it's not the climate change that they think. That's what happens in when the Mashiach comes. It'll be a whole different. So the important thing to remember is that the spiritual and the physical merge for the first time in history. Now, this is a very important concept in order to understand Shabbos. So you're wondering, what does this have to do with Shabbos, It's a beautiful understanding of the third Beis HaMikdash, that's true. It's also an understanding that the Beis HaMikdash itself represents, right, different stages of the tikkun process. That's true. What is its relevance really to Shabbos? So I'm going to ask a series of questions to dramatize how much is really unknown about Shabbos. And I'm going to try to answer it, right, with one idea. That's the way to do it, right? Have a whole bunch of questions, and all you need is one answer for all of them. I think the expression that is used when that happens is called elegant. It's an elegant answer because it answers everything, right? No matter how many questions. Okay, so what are the questions? First of all, what is the essence of Shabbos, right? Well, we know what Shabbos is basically. You have to rest, you have to abstain from malacha, which is 39 categories of work, and so on. So we know that. But what is the essence of Shabbos? Second question, what does it mean by Kedushas Shabbos? We say Shabbos Kodesh. Kodesh what? What is Kedusha? You know, it is a word that is used so often. Most people have no idea what Kedusha is. What is it? You know, what manner is it? Nature, Kedusha. So what I want to answer is, what is Kedushas Shabbos? It's the second question. Fine. Then we say that Shabbos is Me'ein Olam Haba, right? It's a synopsis or a summary or a reflection of Olam Haba. Is it? Right? Is it? Do you feel like it's Olam Haba? Not really, right? You do feel different on Shabbos. But what does it mean that it's like Olam Haba? That is the question. And we say, Me'ein Olam Haba, you know, they sing it, right? It's a whole song and so on, you know. So that's the question, right? And then we all know that on Shabbos, there's an Neshama Yisera, an additional soul. Now what is important is, doesn't say Neshama Chadasha, doesn't say a new soul, it says an additional soul, Yisera. What does that mean? Right? What does it mean? And why do we need a Neshama Yisera? You know? I'm sure whatever Neshama we do have, that should be sufficient. Why should it be Yisera? That is the question. You see? These are all very valid and important questions. Then, 39 categories of work. You know, you can't plant on Shabbos, you can't cook on Shabbos, there are many things you can't do. Why? Why not? You see? Now, even on Yom Tov, you also can't do many things. But we know that you can cook and you can carry. There are many things you can do on Yom Tov. You see? So the question then would be, why? But certainly, why are there 39 categories of work that you can't do on Shabbos? And they're categories, they're not individual activities. You see? They're 39 groups. And each group, theoretically, there's a Gemara in Yerushalmi where it says that Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish worked on this for 3.5 years. And they came up with the idea, and they figured it out, that each group has 39 secondary activities. So if there are 39 groups, and each one has 39 sub-group, or rather sub-malachas, so that's, right, 39, and the top one is the original one, right? So that's, each group then is 40. The first one is the malacha of malacha itself, the principal labor, and then it has 39 other work, right, that's associated with that one. So that's 40. So 40 times 39 is 1,560. That is the theoretical limit of all the activities which are forbidden on Shabbos. Interesting, you know. I mean, we don't really know most of them. You know, we're lucky if we know just a couple of hundred of them. But theoretically, there's 1,560 total activities which are forbidden. So the question then is, why? Why do we have the concept of what's called Isa Malacha, which means prohibition of working, these activities, and so on? And why, and where do we learn these activities from? You see, then we know we make Kiddush, right? We make Kiddush. Why? Why do we have to make Kiddush? And we know when Shabbos leaves, we have to make Havdalah. Question, of course, is why? Why do we have to make Havdalah? You see, then we light candles. Women light candles. Why? What's the concept of lighting candles? The problem is we're so used to doing it, we don't even question what we do. But the truth is, all of these things are halachas. The question is, why do we light candles? Then you have to honor the Shabbos, right? Covered Shabbos and Oinig Shabbos, right? Covered, you have to honor the Shabbos, and Oinig means it has to be a pleasure. You have to bring out the best food, and covered is you have to put out the best tablecloth, the dishes and so on. So why do we do that? That is the question. Then of course, why is Shabbos a day and not a date? Every holiday is really a date. Shabbos is a day. The question is, why? Then there's one more question, which I don't know if any people really ever thought about. How do we introduce the Shabbos meal? We say Shalom Aleichem. You ever notice that? Shalom Aleichem Malchei Asheres. Right? So the question is, yeah, good. We can actually bring it closer if you want. The question is, why do we do that? What do we have to do with the Malachim? Anybody ever think about that? Well, we're so used to saying it, right? Shalom Aleichem, Malchei Asheres, Mimelech Malchei Amlochem, Kodesh Baruch Hu. But what do we have to do with the Malachim? We don't say that on Yontif, right? We say it on Shabbos. But why? What do we have to do with the Malachim? I mean, it's a nice gesture. Say hi to the Malachim. But nothing is a gesture. We know that. Everything has an incredible, deep reason why we have a kesher to the Malachim. So that's the question. Okay. So for those who have been following me, I asked you 13 questions. For those who have been following me. Now the question is, can I answer really all of these 13 questions with one idea? And the answer is, of course, why not? That's the way to do it. One of the hallmarks of truth, I once saw this, scientists, one of the greatest proofs that what they do, if they do an experiment, right? How do they know it's true, really? Because the answer is because if that experiment can answer a whole bunch of phenomena, then they know it's true. Because according to them, nature is elegant. It's interesting criteria that they have. You see? That's why, if medically, one disease, one pathogen, whatever, or deterioration, has many symptoms. But the amazing thing is all the symptoms are connected by one idea. That's elegance. It took a long time till mankind figured that out. That, wait a minute, there's only one reason why. The symptom is not the disease. There's something underneath that unites all the symptoms. That's elegance. And when medicine finally figured that out, they were on their way. You see? Because instead of looking for the hundreds and hundreds of symptoms, all they had to really look, well, not that it was easy, was the one idea that unites everything. Well, same thing in Torah. Truth always lies in the unification of all the halachas in one single idea. It's interesting. And that idea, I'm giving you a secret of how Torah is constructed. And that one idea is almost always in hashkafa. That's what unites the idea. So what I want to do now is I want to tell you the hashkafa of Shabbos, what it really is. And lo and behold, it will conform to the laws of elegance. You see? That's how we know what's called, we hit pay dirt. That's how we know. Okay, good. And for those who would like to experience this more often, all my shurim are on TorahThinking.org, and that's my general approach, where you have one idea, the hashkafa idea, right, that answers a whole bunch of questions. Anyway, okay, so we got to look around. How do we explain 13 different questions? And they're all not easy to answer. Each one is a mystery, you see? How do we explain that? So there's always some kind of chazal, or rabbinical statement, that is the key. The problem is it's usually concealed. It's hidden under a nice drasha, you see? But in that drasha is the real reason. So I looked, and I found it, as far as I'm concerned. What was the drasha? Where does the secret of Shabbos lie? And what is the drasha? Not easy to find, because Chazal are very good at hiding at what they want to, say and so on. But it's in this drasha. It says, it's a Gemara on Shabbos, that God comes over to Moshe Rabbeinu and he says to him, I want you to go and tell the Jews, Matana Tova Yeshli, I got a great gift for the Jews. Bebeis Kenozai, or Itzori, whatever, in my treasure house. That's what God tells Moshe. Go and tell the Jews, I got a great gift to give them that's stored in my treasure house. Right? Interesting chazal. You see? And therefore Shabbos is one of the mitzvahs that was given before Matan Torah. Before. You see? What did God mean? Why? Because what's the question here? Wait a minute. What do you mean you have a gift? Right? Shabbos is a mitzvah like all the other 612 mitzvahs. So if Shabbos is a gift, so why doesn't God say, well, all the 612 commandments are also a gift? And what's the difference between Shabbos and the rest of the commandments? Right? And if Shabbos, and if there are commandments, why isn't Shabbos a commandment? It's not a gift. I've got a lot of halachas that I got to observe. Doesn't sound like a gift to me. Right? They're powerful questions. So, but when the Rosham says, tell the Matana Tova, I got a great gift, he means it. What is the gift? That is the question. And if we solve the problem, you will know the secret, the real secret of what Shabbos is. Why is it a gift? Well, I'll tell you, let's take a look. Guy gets a job, goes to work, right? Well, the boss says, I will pay you once every 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever the deal is, right? Obviously, you do the work and then you get the reward, right? I'm not going to give you payment. So the guy says, well, maybe you can give me the payment now based on what I will do. So the boss is going to say, excuse me, you don't work, you don't get money. I don't give you a reward before. This isn't a gift, right? I'm not giving you money as a gift. I'm giving you as a reward for the job you do. Makes sense, right? That's any job in the world. So the Rosham says to Moshe Rabbeinu, really, I don't have to give them anything. I gave them a job to do, which is the tikkun process, which is the mitzvahs to bring me back into the creation. Fine. So guess what? If they do the job, then I will give them the reward, payment, right? I don't have to give them now anything. That's the gift. The Rosham says, I want to give them a gift. You know what that is? I'm going to give them a taste of what Olam Haba is like, or what Gan Eden is like. You see, that's what I'm going to do. And by the way, this will also answer a 14th question. Why is the Shabbos after Tisha B'Av called Shabbos Nachmo? So the obvious reason is because the Haftarah, we read, right, Nachmu, Nachmu Ami, and so on, be consoled, my people, and so on. It's obvious, right? But I believe there's a much deeper reason why Shabbos Nachmu, that follows Tisha B'Av, is called Shabbos Nachmu. And it's perfectly in line with what I'm about to tell you about Shabbos. Anyway, so the Rosham says to Moshe Rabbeinu, I love my people. Why do I have to wait for 4,000 years until they do the tikkun and then I'll give them the gift? Right? Why? I'll give them the gift now. At least some of it. I'm not going to give them all of it, right? But I'll give them some of it. You see? Shabbos is some of it. That's why it's called a gift. What the Rosham did is very unusual. He actually gave the Jewish people an experience of what they will experience after death in Olam Haba, or rather in Gan Eden, because that's when it really starts. Okay, that inkling of a spiritual environment, right? The Rebbe says, I want to give it to them now. It's not a reward, because they didn't do anything yet, right? The tikkun process is only going to be at the end of time, but I want to give it to them now. That is the gift, and it is a gift, because we don't deserve it. So wait a minute, what is it then? Okay, what did the Rebbe do, which in many ways really fascinating. You see, you should know, the overall tikkun process is to bring God back into creation. And I told you some of the ideas. What God wants, and I mentioned this the last year, concept of zikuch. What the Baruch Shem did is he created a universe that's physical. He wants us to transform a physical universe, right, into a spiritual. But wait a minute, there's a whole bunch of spiritual universes, right? Bunch of them. There's at least 3, actually maybe 4. So what he wants us to do is, through the mitzvahs, to retransform Olam Asiya, which is this world basically, into Olam Yetzirah, into the world above this, the world of formation, which is the world of angels. Then he wants the Jewish people, right, to transform Olam Yetzirah into Olam Bria, which is much higher than Yetzirah. It's the world in many ways, okay, of the divine throne. Then he wants us to convert or retransform, right, Olam Bria into Atzilus, Olam Atzilus, which is the world only inhabited by God. But it's a God in terms of the highest level of Shekhinah that we can experience. So we have to go up, Asiya into Yetzirah, transform into Bria, transform into Atzilus. And then, after all that is done, we leave Olam Hazeh, because Olam Hazeh is a composite of all these 4, and transform Olam Atzilus into Olam Haba, future world. You see how it works? It's like a ladder, where we go up 5 rungs. After the physical, we become spiritual. Then another level of spirituality, a higher level. And finally, in Olam Haba, it's beyond the spiritual. We become, in many ways, a divine being. Not God, but there is an incredible aspect of divinity down in Shabbos. So basically, the job is tikkun. Tikkun simply means purifying the body, not the neshama, the body, until it becomes totally spiritual. You see? That's what basically is what happens. Now, when does this occur? Well, the tikkun process, in the beginning, there were several attempts. The first attempt at the tikkun process was the Adam HaRishon before the sin. But he only had 6 hours to do it. Could have done it, but he failed. Then God gave the tikkun process to his descendants for 2,000 years, until Avraham Avinu. All mankind could do the tikkun. I'm not going to elaborate on that, but the whole tikkun process was given over to every human being. Interesting. Finally, after 2,000 years, they're not doing it. There's the Dor Mabul, the flood, right? And the Dor Haflaga, and the dispersion, where they creating a Mendel, a tower to fight, to kill God. So he took it away from the entire world, and he created the concept called Goy, and he gave it to Avraham Avinu. That's it. Avraham Avinu, the Hebrew. There was no such thing as a Jew. He was a Hebrew. The term Jew only came much later on. So transformations, or the tikkun process, now became a Hebrew enterprise. You see, which is interesting. And that will last approximately 4,000 years. From Avraham Avinu, the world turned 2,000, right, when Avraham Avinu was 52, and we go from that all the way up to our time, right, 5,783, we're entering 84 and so on. It's approximately almost 4,000 years. So the tikkun process itself lasts 4,000 years. That is done by the Jews. Then, after 4,000 plus the 2 is 6. The Gemara says that the world will last 6,000 years. That's it. That is the time limit, the maximum time limit that is given over for the tikkun. You see, when is the English year? 2240. In 2240, the world ends, literally, over, because the tikkun process ends. In fact, the Messianic era is the last epoch in the tikkun process. Now, we don't know how long that is, or if we did, we'd know when the Mashiach is going to come. You see, so the world ends in 2240, which is the year 6000, and that begins the transformations. All of a sudden, like I said, the Beis HaMikdash in Yitzira comes down, becomes our Beis HaMikdash, but we become spiritual. How do we know? Right? Because there's no more death. Tchias HaMesim. Right? We know. One of the major tenets of belief is that Tchias HaMesim, right? The resurrection of the dead in the time of the Mashiach ben David. Believe me, when you get up after you're dead and you resurrect, you are not the same person. Obviously, you have a whole different body that cannot die, that cannot decompose. In fact, the entire creation goes through that Tchiyah process, you see? So that's the beginning. So until 6,000 years, that's the tikkun process and the beginning of a transformation. Tchias HaMesim is the beginning of the transformation. Then what happens in the year 6,000 to the year 7,000, it's 1,000 years, right? We graduate to Olam Yetzirah, right? We experience the world as Olam Yetzirah. We become like Malachim. And therefore we experience the Shekhinah at that level, much greater than just the Beis HaMikdash. So, from 0 to 6 is the tikkun process by different people and so on. And then in the year 6,000, 2240, which by the way is only 217 years to go, almost 16, that's all that's left. You see? So in the years 6 to 7 is Yetzirah. From 7 to 8, we go into Bria. Right. 1,000 years, we go into Bria. Then from 8 to 9, we go into Atzilus. And then from 9 and up, right, we go into Olam Haba. So Olam Haba begins in the year 2009. So in English that would be 25. Right, we're now in 2023. In the year 2500, right, which is whatever, we experience Olam Haba, and that goes on for eternity. You see, that's what happens. In any case, so what's the gift? So I've now shown you the tikkun experience, right? And in the tikkun, after the tikkun, you have 3 different rungs that we go up, right? And we experience the spirituality of the different rungs. Finally, the last rung is Olam Haba, right? So, where's the gift? So the gift is this. God says, you know what I'm going to do? Like this, the tikkun's going to take them a long time. And they're not going to experience the 7,000th year, which is the experience of Olam Yetzirah, until the year 6,000. See? I don't want them to wait so long. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give them some type of experience of the 7,000th year, the Elef HaShvi. Yeah, but wait a minute, they don't deserve it. And the Rebbe says, so what? It's a gift. That's what Shabbos is. So the first 6 days represents 6,000 years. The 7th day represents what we will experience fully in the 7,000th year. That's really what Shabbos is. It's a gift, because we didn't work. The tikkun process still goes on. You see? It's amazing when you think about that. That's what Shabbos is. It is an experiencing of the Elef Hashvi. That's what really Shabbos is. Now, you're going to say to me, wait a minute. Sounds nice, but I don't experience that. And the answer is, you can't experience the total thing, or else you wouldn't have free will anymore to have to do the mitzvahs. You know, all of a sudden, if God exposed you to what He will be like, the Shekhinah, in the 7,000th year, that's the end of your bechira, obviously. You see? So the Baruch Shem says, I'm only going to give you a partial experience. You see? Yeah, but wait a minute. How do we experience something in the period of time from 6,000 to 7,000? Right? How? Forget about what for a minute. How? And the answer is the Neshama Yisera. That's why we need a Neshama Yisera. What does that mean? The Neshama of a person has 5 parts. Okay? Each part is connected to the 5 worlds, which I mentioned. There's Asiya, Yitzira, Bria, Atzilus, and Olam Haba. Your 5 parts are connected, interestingly, like a chain, right, to all 5 parts. You see, so your nefesh, spiritual nefesh, is connected to Asiya. You see, your ruach, it's called the ruach, the spirit, it's connected to Yitzira. You see, your neshama, which is an individual term, besides a collective term, neshama is connected to bria. You see, and your chaya is connected to atzilus. And Yechida, which is the 5th part and the highest, is connected to Olam Haba. Therefore, guess what? If the Baruch Shem ever removed the barrier or the covering, you could actually experience and look into each one of those worlds. Right? Because you're already connected there. You see? It's like having 5 movie screens that are connected into each of the olamas. The problem is that the Baruch Shem has shut them down. He doesn't allow you to look into it. But what happens if a guy walked over to you and said, you know, would you like to see something that you're really there but you don't know it? Yeah, I'd love to see that, right? And all of a sudden, you press the button of your ruach, and all of a sudden, wow, I'm looking into Olam Yetzirah. Not only are you looking into it, you could talk to Malachim, because that's their place of inhabitants. Isn't that amazing? You could talk to Malachim in Olam Yetzirah, because you're already connected. Your problem is you don't know how to open it up. That's your problem. You see, but really, the wherewithal exists that you can actually see into Olam Yetzirah. So what did the Baruch Shem do? That's called your Neshama Yisera. It doesn't say a new soul. It means your additional souls, right? The other 4 besides the Nefesh. You see? So all of us right now are already connected. Yetzirah. You see? Yeah, but wait a minute. I just said that the Baruch Shem is giving us some type of experience of Yetzirah. Yes, but not total. It's like Daniel, when he saw the Malach, okay, Gabriel, or whatever, Daniel, right? So it says there that he saw the Malach. And the ones with him, the prophets, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, they felt the Malach and they trembled, but they did not see. That's called a partial prophecy. What is prophecy? Prophecy is simply the ability to open up that chelik of your neshama, and guess what? You could look right into that world. That's what prophecy is. It enables you to see the place that you're connected to. That's what Nevuah is. It's a transcendent phenomena that enables you to visit or look into and therefore talk to Malachim. Let's say if I opened up your Ruach, right, you could actually talk to Malachim, right, in Olam Yetzirah. It's amazing. That's what Nevuah really is. You see, and now once you could talk to Malachim, guess what? They're going to tell you information, right? You can have a whole discussion with them. They can tell you information. That's what it's all about. you see? And then there are also malachim and bria. If I could turn on your bria consciousness, you could talk to them. You see? That's what nevuah really is. And the Navi was able to do that through Shemos, divine names. That's the secret of nevuah. Nevuah was a way of transcending the world and being privy to the worlds that you're connected to by using the proper technique, which is what they did. They used to go to yeshiva. A Navi had to go to yeshiva to be a Navi, right? It wasn't something that just happened. He had to know how to transcend the worlds. Well, how do I open up my ruach, right? And so on. My neshama, my yechida, my chaya, my yechida. How? So he went to yeshiva for several years where he learned how to meditate on divine names, and they would open up the consciousness of these places. Isn't that incredible? And why do Hashem do that? Why is there a phenomenon of prophecy? Because the Hashem misses us. That's why. Because that's really where he hangs out. I hate to use the word hangs out, but that's where he really resides. So he wants us to be able to talk to him. Yeah, it takes effort. We got to learn the techniques, but that's what he wants. Or else why would he do it? You see, now different prophets had different accesses. They say Moshe Rabbeinu, he was able to activate his consciousness at the greatest level ever known to man. Therefore, he was the greatest prophet. You see, he could activate his consciousness of actually all of them, but he had a vision which was startling. I don't want to get the whole concept of the war, just to show you what it really is. So, what the Rebbe Hashem is amazing. He said, you know what I'm going to do? I want to give them a gift. I'm going to give them the ability to activate consciousness of Yetzirah, you see. But I can't do it fully or else I have no free will. But I will do it partially. They can experience something different because they are feeling Olam Yetzirah, you see. But they won't be able to see anything, you see. And that's what Shabbos is. You ever notice when Shabbos comes, somehow you feel different? What is that feeling? Where's it coming from? You see, it's not psychological. There's something there, you see. There's something there that's very pleasant, and you can almost feel it spiritual. Do you ever ask yourself, what is this that I'm experiencing? And the answer is, that's Olam Yetzirah at a very small level, you see. So what God wants to prepare you by saying, listen, I'm going to give you a taste, right, of Olam Yetzirah, and that's what you're experiencing, you see. That's what Shabbos really is. Shabbos is a prophetic experience. You don't realize that, but you all become prophets, but at a very low level, without having to go to school for years to learn how to activate all the different segments of consciousness. Right. Shabbos is a prophetic experience that every Jew will experience. That's what it is. And that's the gift, you see. Which is very interesting when you think about that. You know? In other words, what Shabbos is a prophetic experience of Olam Yetzirah that will only happen fully in Elef Hashvi, in the 7,000th year. That's what it is. And therefore, once you understand that, right, that Shabbos is a partial experience for obvious reason, like I said, because God does not want to remove your free will. But there is something different on Shabbos. You see, that's really what it's all about. It is a prophetic experience that we have because we are connected to Olam Yetzirah, which is really what we're supposed to experience in the 7,000th year. Now, if that's the experience, wow, it's incredible. But there's a condition. There's a condition. What is the condition? The condition is that you have to act. So you have a whole week, 7 days. Each day represents 1,000 years of the world, like it says in Tillim. You know, 1 day in your eyes is 1,000 in us. So therefore you have Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, right, which is 5,000 years, the equivalent of. Then Friday is 6,000th year, right? So Shabbos is the 7,000th year, Elef Hashvi, right? And therefore you experience it on the 7th day. That's why it's not a date. It's a day that corresponds to the 7,000th year. You see, when you think about it, it's really amazing, and so on. But there's a condition that on the 7th day, which is Friday night, you need to act as if it was the 7,000th year. That's the condition. It's called behavioral conformity toward an assumed reality creates that reality. If you behave on the 7th day as if it is the 7,000th year, you will experience prophecy partial of Shabbos, which is the 7,000th year, Olam Yitzira. That's the deal. Well, what happens on the 7,000th year? What happens is very interesting. The revelation of God on the 7,000th year is astounding. We live in a world of what's called cause and effect. We cause and we see the effect. We go to work, we make money, right? We do things and we see the effect. But on the 7th, but really who's doing everything for us? It's really God. We don't realize that. We think that we are actually a cause. But the truth is, we're not a cause at all, except in the area that we have free will. God does everything for us, you see. Without getting into the depths of that, because really, we don't really exist. So how can we cause anything? It's God who constantly sustains us and makes us be, and He does everything. When I lift my hand, it was really God lifting my hand, except it looked like I was doing it. But you don't realize that behind the hand rising, the Rosham is saying, rise, rise. And He's just waiting for me to have free will to want to raise it. But that's really Him. So in the 7,000th year, He is the only one that does anything, and that's when you realize you're not a cause of anything. That's what it means in the 7,000 years. All the tzaddikim become as nothing. Nobody did anything really, except where they had free will. You see? That's why it says, V'Hashem nizgav levadoi bayomahu. On that day, which is the 7,000th year, you will see that God is the only cause at all. So therefore you have to act in that recognition. What? By not doing any work that causes any effect. Where was this work learned out? By the Mishkan, right? And the Mishkan, remember I told you, is a model. So God actually used the 39 categories of work to create the world. That's really what it is. And that's why the work that was used to build the Mishkan is the work activity that you cannot use in Shabbos. Because that was the work that that was the activities that God used to build the universe, the whole creation. So therefore you must cease from doing that type of activity, thereby admitting that you are now in the 7,000th year. See, that's the deal. And therefore you cannot do the work that is used in building the Mishkan, because that was the very same work that God used, and He ceased doing it on Shabbos. Therefore you must cease to do it, because in the climate of the 7,000th year, you realize you're not a cause. Only God is the cause. You see? So all the halachas, really, if you think about it, of Shabbos is to symbolize and reflect that you are now experiencing the or, the light of the 7,000th year Shechina, partially. That's really why you have all the halachas. You see? Now we can answer many questions. Why is it you say Shalom Aleichem? Why? And the answer is because, guess what? You are now conscious at a certain level of the angels. You're in Olam Yitzira. That's interesting. If you're in Olam Yitzira, guess what you can say? Hi to the Malachim. That's why you can do it. Because you're now on their home turf. You're in Olam Yitzira. So it's true you don't see it because God does not want to remove your bechira, your free will. But guess what? You are on the turf of Malachim. So therefore we say, Shalom Aleichem, Malchei Ashores. Isn't that interesting? But on Yom Tov, it's not about that, which I will explain. But Shabbos is where you are experiencing the climate, the environment of the 7,000th year, and therefore you can say hello to the Malachim. That's number one. Number two, why is Shabbos after Tisha B'Av called Nachmu? Why? Besides the fact that that's the Haftarah. Because what did they lose? The Shekhinah. The Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. Yes? The temple was destroyed. So when the temple was destroyed, God left. So he said, that's it, no more. But when Shabbos came, we re-experienced God. Not in the form of the temple, but in the form of Shabbos. So that's Nachmu. We had a consolation. He's back. Isn't that interesting? God is back. Not in the form of the Beis HaMikdash, right? But in the form of the day of Shabbos itself. That's why it's called Nachmu. Because we re-experience God prophetically. You see, we actually experience God, like I said, right? That's the climate of the 7,000th year. And therefore it's called Shabbos Nachmu. Isn't that interesting? You see, it's called the Shabbos of consolation. Because we are back being prophets, even if it's on a small level. Now, so we now understand, what is the essence of Shabbos? The essence of Shabbos is a gift, and that gift is where we can actually experience the presence of God as He will appear in the 7,000th year. That's all it is. But that is an avur. We do it because we really, all of us, are really potential Nevi'im. Right, that's where we are. And we will all live to be Nevi'im when the Mashiach comes. That's when all the floodgates are opened. And every one of us will experience God as a prophetic experience. You see, what is Kedusha? Kedusha means we experience God. Holiness is God. And on Shabbos, Kedusha Shabbos, because we experience God as He will be revealed in the 7,000th year. That's Kedushas Shabbos. We're on the 7,000th year, 7th day, right? This corresponds to it. We actually experience Kedusha, the holiness of the presence of God. You see, why is it Me'ein Olam Haba? Because after this world is finished, after 6,000 years, everything after that is a reflection of Olam Haba. It's all spiritual, right? But it's a 7,000th year or, really. It's not the or, the light, the presence of God, as He will appear to us, right, in Olam Haba. No, that you have to wait. But it's Me'ein Olam Haba. It's like Olam Haba. That's what Chazal say, Me'ein, right? It's a reflection of Olam Haba. It's not the same or that we would experience in Olam Haba, but it is a reflection of beyond the physical. That's why it's called Me'ein Olam Haba. You see? We now know why we have the Neshama Yisera. We always have the Neshama Yisera. The problem is it's blocked, right? It's not allowed to be conscious of what it's connected to. But now we are conscious of it, right? Because that's what happens on Shabbos. God opens up and we become prophets. But we can only do that because we already have a Neshama Yisera. We're already connected, you see, to Olam Yetzirah. You see, we now know why 39 activities are forbidden, actually much more, because they were all used in the construction of the Mishkan, which is what God did to create the entire creation. So we must desist from those works that God used to create creation to recognize that we are now in the 7,000th year climate where God is the only cause and we are not. You see? And therefore we make Kiddush. What is Kiddush? Is where we acknowledge Kiddush. We acknowledge that God is here. The presence of God. That's what really Kiddush is. It's an acknowledgement that God, right, the Shekhinah, is now here. You see? That's why we say the Chododi and so on, that the Shekhinah has now come in. We say Havdalah because after Shabbos, right, God leaves. So we have to acknowledge, right, that He was here, but now He left. It's all about the acknowledgement that we are really in the we are experiencing the 7,000th year. You see, why do we light candles? Because the candle is Olam Yetzirah. That's spirituality. That's the Ruchnius. You see, that's why we light candles, to reflect that we are experiencing a new Or, an Or of the 7,000th year. That's why we light candles. And of course, since we are welcoming the Shekhinah, we have to honor the Shekhinah. You see, if a president entered your house, well, not this president, but if a president entered your house, right, you would put out your best fineries, you know what I'm saying, and best food. That's covered in oineg, you see, right? And that's why Shabbos is a day, not a date, because it has to reflect, right, the seventh day, which is the equivalent of the 7,000th year, you see. So that's amazing when you think about that, right? You now know what Shabbos is. But the greater you recognize what Shabbos is, the greater will be your experiencing of Shabbos. That's the way it works. So even though the essential concept of Shabbos, right, is a gift, but the gift itself, how big is the gift, depends on how much do you acknowledge Shabbos. So if you're Shomer Shabbos, really Shomer Shabbos, and you're careful not to do any malacha, any forbidden work, right? You make Kiddush, Havdalah, and you honor the Shabbos, right? And you look forward to it and so on, then your ability to receive that presence will be much greater. That's what the Baruch Shalom says. You see? So the gift, how much of the gift you get depends on the conditions. You see, which is very interesting. Mitzvahs are not conditions. It's a mitzvah that you have to do. You see? But the halachas of Shabbos is really conditions in order to experience the light or the Or of the 7,000th year. You see? Well, guess what? I basically answered every question with that fundamental understanding of what Shabbos really is. You see? It is what's important to remember is all of us are really potential prophets now. Our problem is we don't have the ability or the knowledge of how to turn on the consciousness of all the parts of our neshama. In those days, you had to go to school for that. So the Baruch Shem gave us a gift, right? Where you don't need school. I'll give it to you. Just behave as if it is the 7,000th year. So that's really what it is. It's a prophetic experience. And people don't realize that and so on, you see. And like I say, you know, that's the Kiddush of Shabbos, you see, and why it's Me'oin. And now you know why you have a Neshama Yisera. Because without that Neshama Yisera, you can't do it. So if that's fine with Shabbos, what about Yom Tov? What is Yom Tov then? Because Yom Tov is also an Or. But the interesting thing about that is every holiday reflects or is a repercussion of a historical event. You see? Therefore, we experience an aspect of the tikkun consequences after each historical event. But there we had to do the work. You see, and then we experience whatever the tikkun segment was of that holiday. You see, that's what a yontif really is. You see, a yontif is not experience. It's not a gift. We had to do something, which was the historical event. That was the tikkun, the historical event, right? So therefore, God allows us to experience some of the Or, the light, the presence of God that we actually created because of the input of the tikkun of that particular event, like Pesach or Shavuos and so on. But it's only after we do it. It's not a gift, which means it has to come after we do it. You see, where Shabbos comes merely by acknowledging that day, and we get it even though we have not completed the tikkun. You see. So that's what Yom Tov is, you see, and Yom Tov is really the Or. By the way, we will experience, why is there no Yom Tovim? And it says in the Chazal that the only Yom Tov that will be available, right, is Purim. There's no Yom Tov. It's gone. You see, after Mashiach comes, there's no Yom Tovim anymore. There's no Pesach, no Shavuos, no Rosh Hashanah, no Sukkot, none of that. Why? Because like I said, because we will be experiencing all the Or, all the divine presence that is a result of our tikkun. You see? And that's why you don't need Yom Tov anymore, right? It'll be all present all year round, the or, the light, the presence of God as the Shekhinah, right, throughout the entire year will be thrust upon us totally because we did the tikkun. So why should we experience the reward? You see the difference. That's what Yom Tov is. Yom Tov is experience of the tikkun, the feeling of the presence of God after we've done the work, and the original work was done in the historical event. That's it, you see? So when the Mashiach comes, it's all present because we already did the work, you see? So why do we have to go through eating matzah? We experience the light of God, the Shekhinah itself, of what matzah was, what constitutes matzah, and so on, you see? It's very interesting, the difference. And that's why Yom Tov is a date. It's not a day, it doesn't represent the thousands of years. It's a date of, because the historical event occurred on a date, right? The 15th of Nisan is Pesach, right? The 15th of Tishrei is Sukkot, right? Those are dates, not days. So Shabbos is a day because it has to reflect the 7,000th year. Yom Tov is a date, right, that we used to have that reflects the historical event that happened on that date. It happened on the date, not on the day. You see? But since all of it is after the tikkun process in the Messianic era, we don't have to experience the mitzvahs of the Yom Tov. Isn't that interesting? We get it all in the Messianic era. We will get the experience of every single Yom Tov. It's like a whole bundle, you see, of or in the Messianic era. But Shabbos is a future experience. That's the incredible difference. Okay, I hope I answered everything. Now you know what Shabbos really is. And we have to look forward that this is what's going to be the regular experience, certainly in the 7,000th year. And the truth is, what we experience now on Shabbos is not even it's not even a billionth of what we're going to experience in the 7,000th year. Because then there's no more physicality.
Any questions?
Any questions?
So,
yes.
with the calendar, there's perhaps, allegedly, maybe, discrepancy in the exact year that we're in. But whether that is true or not,
Well, that's the year.
Shabbos in early. Is there
What do you mean by, you mean
bringing Shabbos in early? Like, even if we are 217 years away, Shabbos can come in and...
Well, yeah, because that exhibits some type of excitement. Taste for Shabbos, So that's it's like an anticipation. It's like if some, I hate to use but let's say if the President of the United States said he wanted to see you, wanted to check out how you're doing and so on, you'd be in tremendous anticipation of his visit. That's taste for Shabbos. So that adds value to your expectations of the seventh day, right?
But in terms of the timeline itself, isn't there, or is there not a discrepancy in the year, or it doesn't really matter?
There is some type of, nobody really knows the answer to that. There's 200 and something years missing in the calendar by the Persians. There's a whole essay by Rav, what's his name, in not Crown Heights, in Washington Heights. What was his name? He discusses it. He has a whole discussion about that, Yeah?
Rav, you made a distinction for Purim.
What was that?
Why is there a distinction from Purim from the other
Because Purim, the essential job that they did on Purim is they accepted the oral law with love. That was the first time in history that they really, oral law, they accepted the entire Torah. I have a whole shia on Purim about that, So that acceptance was so great that, we accepted Torah, and therefore, even in the Messianic era, it's celebrated, But everything else is a specific event. Like Pesach is all about the Zoyamo. I'm not going to get into it, but each holiday has its own special, unique or light that comes.
You mentioned something about accessing the angels, when you get to a certain level.
Because you're in Yetzirah.
Should we actually doing something like that? Or should we be going to the source, Hashem, directly to Hashem?
Well, the fact that you can say Shalom Aleichem should indicate to you that, what am I doing saying hello to Malachim? It must be that I'm somehow on their turf. So really it's an indication of what the consequences of observing Shabbos is. But you never mean, you certainly never mean to ignore the Rabbanu Shalom. It's just that you're now at a closer level to God, because you're now on the Olim Yitzira, which is really the level of the Malachim. You've ascended. Yeah.
And Ezekiel got all the instructions for the...
Beis HaMikdash Shlishi, right. In Lamed Ches, right, 38.
But there's two theories, right? There's one that it might come down already.
Well, that's what I said. That
Or we might be building it, right?
we have to build something, and then God will bring on the rest, right? So I mentioned that. Yeah. That is an argument. Any other questions?
What about the struggle with limiting us?
What?
I can understand now why it's better to shorten a Shabbos nap, because Shekhinah is right there and you don't want to go to sleep. But why is there such a struggle that Shabbos nap can really draw you to take a nap on Shabbos afternoon?
What is the struggle?
Sometimes I sleep more than I would want to sleep. Something about sleep on Shabbos.
Yeah, well, first of all, Shabbos is a concept of cessation. When you sleep, you're not doing anything. So it does fit in line that you're supposed to cease from labor. And the best way to cease from labor is to go to sleep, because then you're clearly not doing anything except maybe sleepwalking. But how many people sleepwalk? So sleeping is a total disengagement from activities. So in a certain sense, it is in the line of Shabbos, but also, it's true what you're saying, that the Shekhinah is there, so why would anybody want to go to sleep, and so on. But it is a day of rest in that sense, where you want to feel refreshed for the, for Shabbos, and to recuperate sort of from the struggles of the week. The week is a very difficult time. It's because what's constant in the week is activity. Why? Because you have to survive. We're always preoccupied with survival. That never leaves us. Whatever it is, raising kids, making money, and that takes a tremendous mental strain. So in a certain sense, you desist from all that, for the sleep, But there are people, by the way, that don't go to sleep on Shabbos, right? But that's because they want to experience constantly that feeling of God, Shekhinah, Shabbos, right?
The energy for the week comes from Shabbos.
Well, yeah, because you recuperate in that sense, right? Because you're not doing anything, you can't work, That's why it's interesting. Shabbos is such a different experience from Jews and Goyim. A Goy, what does he do? Well, it's beach day, and I can putter around the house and do my projects, all on Shabbos. That's what to them it's an alternate weekday in a certain sense. For a Jew, it's not. It's a complete cessation of any type of work.
Weinberg about Shalom used to say, Shabbos is a day on, not a day off.
Yeah, in that certain sense, yes. On means to experience the spiritual, right? Yeah, you want...
Yes, thank you very much. Could Rob please explain the time between the years 6,000 and 7,000, 7,000, 8,000, 8,000, 9,000, 9,000, and 10,000? I think I've explained before that there are different gradations.
Right.
And I'm not sure that I quite followed it.
Well, in general, the difference between all the thousands of years it really starts from Yemei HaMashiach, Tchias HaMesim. Tchias HaMesim is not just you get up from the dead. No, that's what people, they look simplistically, well, you get up. No. Tchias HaMesim is the beginning of Zikuch. Because when you get up from the dead, you no longer have Zoyama. Wow. We don't even know what that feels like. You see? So that is the beginning of the process called purification. That's what Zikuch means. You are purified from the Zoyama. You don't have it anymore. That's why you don't die. That's why you can get up from the dead altogether. So, right, yeah, he had right, he didn't have Zoyama until he sinned.
So that's in 6,000?
No, that's before, that's the Messianic era. So the Zikuch, the purification of the physical, starts by Mashiach ben David, not Mashiach ben Yosef, right? And that goes till the year 2240, which is the year 6000 in Judaism. Then the purification becomes much more intense, where the body changes. First, you get rid of the Zoyama, but in the beginning of the 7,000th year, right? Then the body changes, which is interesting.
That's what I got lost between, because 2240 is the year 6,000.
Right.
Yeah, and then the Rav went to 7,000.
No,
Well, I said-
7,000,
That's the 7,000th year. Begins the 7,000th year. 2240, 6,000 years have passed.
Right.
Now 2241 is their entry into the 7,000th year. Millennium, right? And that goes from 6 to 7.
Okay.
Then you have from 7 to 8, 8 to 9, and the beginning of the 9,000th year is Olam Haba. So so once you leave the Messianic era, you enter a 3,000 year period. And the difference is that the entire universe in the 7,000th year, right? So that's what we're experiencing on Shabbos, but what really happens is the entire universe dematerializes. It becomes spiritual, right? It's no longer, it's gone. We don't know what it is, but the entire physical universe changes into a low-level spiritual type. And the body begins to change also, but in the sense that you lose all your drives, that the neshama and the physical now vie in the same body. Neither can ascend, or I should say neither can dominate. Remember Moshe Rabbeinu? He went up, he was there 40 days. What was so interesting about that? He didn't eat or drink. Why? Well, he still had a physical body, and the answer is that his body became zikuch. That's really incredible, as if he was in the 7,000th year. And in the 7,000th year, guess what? You no longer have any physical drives, but you're still physical. But the drives are gone. Everything. No eating, no sleeping, no drinking, nothing. It's gone. And so that's one aspect where all the drives of the physical are gone. And the other side, the neshama now can vie with the physical. See, right now we live in a world where you are dominated by the physical. I don't care who you are. But in the 7,000th year, the body no longer dominates. It's now equal to the spiritual, the neshama. So they're now both in the same guf, which is physical, right? And they both dominate. Neither is greater than the other. The change of the universe is in the beginning of the 6,000th year. The change of the physical, really physical, where the body changes actually. Not only doesn't it dominate, but actually the body begins to change into something which we don't even know what it is, right? And that begins in the 7,000th year, from 7 to 8. You see? And then that continues. That zikuch of the guf continues from 8 to 9, you see? Or I should say from 6 to 7, 7 to 8, 8 to 9, 2,000 years. Because remember, what you're ascending is the olamas. You're going from 6 to 7, you have gone into Olam Yetzirah. From 7 to 8, you have gone into Olam Bria. From 8, you're Ramish in there. And from 8 to 9, you've gone into Olam Atzilus. And from 9, you're into Olam Haba.
What happens between 8 and
You're into Atzilus. That's we cannot even imagine what this. No angel can go into Atzilus. They can't even go into that. You see, that's like walking into the Kodesh Kedoshim. You can't, or else you drop dead. Atzilus is a place, so to speak, that only God resides, or the Shekhinah, as He will be manifest in Olam Hazeh. In Olam Habo, we have no idea what God will be.
So the body changes between 7 and 8.
8 and 8 and 9.
Allows the entry into Atzilus between 8 and 9.
Right.
Without-
See how it works. So it's a gradual change. You see.
What happens to the Jewish people versus the rest of the people?
Well, the Jewish people are the primary people that changed because they did the tikkun. But all those goyim, right, that were part of that tikkun, they helped the Jews do the tikkun, right, in whatever way. And let's say a guy, he made shoes. So some Jew bought his pair of shoes. So the guy can now walk around. So that guy will experience some aspect of reward because he was instrumental, you know. And in a certain sense, you know, even though there are only 15 million Jews, many goyim will have olam haba, not the same as a Jew. Their olam haba, the olam haba of a goy, is through the olam haba of the Jew. It's interesting. They don't have a direct access to olam haba, you see, because they don't have the 5 parts of the neshama. But what they will experience, you know what it's like? It's like the Jews eating steak. So, you know, so the guy says, maybe I can have a piece of your steak. So you give him a piece of your steak. That's his olam haba, which is beyond belief. Don't think that, it's just that relative to the Jew, he doesn't have the same olam haba as the Jew. He could have if he would become Jewish, right? And a Noahide, I believe, will have a very great portion of olam haba. Not the same as a Jew, but since he does believe in God, and he accepted the 7 commandments of Noah, based on the fact that God commanded it, not because he thinks it's social and all that, he will have a tremendous olam haba. Those are the ger toshavs, and so on. And anybody who became Jewish, the gerim, they will have they're Jewish. So you have a certain order. You have the olam haba of the Jew, which is the greatest of all. Then you have the olam haba of the ger, which is equal to the Jew. Interesting, because he became Jewish. Then you have the olam haba of the bnei Noach. You know, they will have a tremendous olam haba also, relative to this world. You know, and then you have goyim, which also can have an olam haba, but you know that olam haba is in many ways through the Jew. You know,
Bodies be different
their bodies.
between the different nations or the different levels of the bodies will be different. Whatever you
Well, it's an interesting question. Nobody's physical body would be the same. It's a change.
But the body of one group versus another group and each 1,000.
Well, the amount of awe that they receive, because that's really what it is. You're really receiving God from within you. You actually experience God in a way which is incomprehensible. So,
Level of body.
right, they will have a different level of experiencing God. There's of course, because, but it's up to them if they want to become Jewish, you know, and so on, you know. But this is all after the Messianic era. The year 6000 is really when everything flies. That's really when everything happens. But the truth is, you don't even have to wait. As soon as Mashiach ben Yosef comes, we're home. Mashiach David comes, there's no Zayama, then you're really home. Because you don't even have Zayama. The Zikuch process begins then. See, right now we're at the stage where God is cleaning up the mess. He's what's called ending everything. Yeah. It's funny because the next year I'm going to give is about all of this. What is the real climate of the end? It's the next year, but I won't be in Israel for that. You know, it goes into why is the reform movement successful, conservative, why the Holocaust happened, why Zionism happened, why communism happened. What is going on here? You know, and it's also, not only that, it's also, why is it 90% of the Jews are gone? You don't realize that. We don't realize, you know, but you just take a look in Israeli society, most of them are secular. Why? Why is God allowing that? And I talk about the secret of what is really going on. But that's going to be a sheer, well, I won't give it here.
Everybody play out what it is, their choices, and they will get...
No. There's something going on which is astounding. It's God's input that this type of situation must happen at the end. And it's very bad. It's very bad. I'm going to bring down, you see all kinds of illusions. I'll give you one, if you're curious. Just one. It says a pasuk, Lo shokach Torah mizaroi, that the Torah will never be forgotten in Israel, among his seed. It's a pasuk, right? So you look at that pasuk, excuse me, what? The Torah will never be forgotten, right? So you say, what do you mean? Why do you have to tell me the Torah has never been forgotten? Because there will be so little left of Torah that it's ke'ilu, it's forgotten. And all you need to fulfill that pasuk is one Jew remembers his Torah. Everybody else forgot it. And that pasuk will be fulfilled. Think about that. If the Torah will never be forgotten, all you need is one Jew to fulfill that pasuk. And 99.99999% of Jews don't know their Torah. So why is God telling me this? Because that's exactly what's going to happen in the end. That's why most of Klal Yisrael are complete amoratzim. There's a secret to this. And God is warning us, at the end of time, I don't care who you are, you will not know your Torah. And part of what I go into is, how God, it's one thing if you're secular, how did God pull that off? But what happens if you went to yeshiva? How does he pull it off? And he did. Because that nevuah goes to everybody. That's one of the, I'm going to talk about what basically is the secret of the end. Just not here. But it'll be on the internet. Be a fascinating share. What the secret of the end is. And it's remarkable because it realizes all the isms. Reformed, conservative, Reconstruction, assimilation, intermarriage, Holocaust, Zionism, communism. It also reveals why so many tzaddikim, people who know Torah, are dying from COVID. There's been an unusual amount of people who died from COVID. Yeah, tzaddikim, rebbes, rosh yeshivas, b'nai Torah. Why? It's almost like COVID was for them, to get rid of them. Yeah, it's almost like God has to fulfill his prophecy that the Torah will not be forgotten in Israel. All you need is one Jew to remember his Torah, and that pasuk is fulfilled. Wow! And why does he have to do this? That's the shir.
We see that some of the great tzaddikim in our generation, they're very makpid to add to Shabbos at the end. They say
yeah, well, yeah.
Even like the Amshanaber, even.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So if we can have access, as the Rav saying, this tremendous level of kedusha,
right,
and this connection to our neshama yisera,
right.
So why not? Why shouldn't we? I mean, we see in the Muslim Litvish shuls, they're like to the second.
Right, yeah.
They're running out of Shabbos. Yeah. Whereas it should be forgiven. We should all.
Well, you know why they're running out? Because they really don't experience Shabbos. That's why.
Yeah.
So if I don't experience anything, what's the point?
Yeah.
You see?
Yeah.
If they would have experienced Shabbos and done the right things, which is to immerse in the whole spirit of Shabbos, they wouldn't run out.
Yeah.
They'd say, why do I want to run out from this?
Yeah. So it's a good thing to try to organize Yidden to keep,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's why this guy in South Africa, Rabbi Warren Goldstein, a tremendous, what he's doing is really tremendous.
The Shabbos Project.
The Shabbos Project, yeah. I think I was reading an article, I think he got 150,000 Jews to experience some form of Shabbos, which is a tremendous mitzvah. Really, he should be blessed for this, and so on. But it's only 150,000 Jews. What about the rest? 15 million. The question is why? Why does it have to become so dark in the end? And I'm going to talk about that, what the secret is, and so on, because you see it many, many places. That in the end of time, it must become dark. What?
Would you describe darkness as a distortion?
Darkness is three things. And the one who says this is Yirmiyahu. Here's what he says. Soreh in the Echo. This is the darkness. Three things. Soreha umalkeha bagoyim. Her princes and her kings are in the hands of the enemy, the goyim. They're dominated by the goyim. That's one. So that's the domination of tumah, of evil. Ain Torah. There's no Torah. He says it, right? Then he says, V'gam nevi'eh lo yimotzu chazoin. And her prophets, Israel's prophets, don't see any vision. Right? That's the Shekhinah. The three things that happen at the end is we are completely dominated by the Goyim. There's an incredible scarcity of real Torah, and also the Shekhinah leaves, and therefore there's no Nevuah. Those are the three things. That's darkness, but to an unusual degree.
So maybe darkness has to fulfill itself as darkness?
Part of it is to satisfy justice, which I once spoke about, right? But there's much more. It's very interesting what's happening, why. But I'm going to give a whole shear on that. That's up ahead. Okay. So, let's look forward to Shabbos.
It's your